Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So, Donald Trump wants a bill of love. Now, if you're not necessarily up on this, Donald Trump ran on a campaign of immigration reform, centered mostly around a wall, which, if you're like me, you don't believe we're ever going to see built. If brick one of that wall had been built, I would be... I think Donald Trump's political career would be in better shape right now. But... yeah, there is no wall, there is no brick, and I would be very surprised if there ever was. However, in his plans for this wall that will, I almost freaking guarantee you, never happen. And by the way, Travis, did you hear when this wall would eventually be finished?
I think they have to start it first, but
assuming they started tomorrow, the wall I think would be done around 2030. I think they were saying, like, it's don't quote me on that. It's a really, really long time. And if the wall gets started today and is finished in the timeline that they imagine it will be finished in, Donald Trump will be long gone by the time. Like, he's what, 70, 71, 72? How old is he now?
He might
71?
even be dead.
No, I just no. His time in the White House will have come and gone for sure, even if he does score himself a double decker. But there's a very good chance that by the time the wall is done, by the time his legacy is built, he will be not of this earth anymore. He will be off in the great ether or worm food or whatever the hell you want to call it. So it's unbelievable because the cost is going to be so astronomical. And it's also it really is one of those things. If you genuinely believe the wall is a good idea, well, it's one of those things where you're like, I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for future generations, because we won't see the effects of it forever and ever. Amen. And that's where the whole idea sort of falls down a little bit to me, because people look to Donald Trump for change. People that felt forgotten went, change my life. My life sucks right now. Please help. And this is not about helping you right now. This is about helping future generations if you are a believer in the wall. But as much as he wants to maintain the wall, he's also asked for a bill of love to protect dreamers. This would be illegal immigrants that arrived in America when they were young children. What's the cutoff age for being a dreamer? Is it like, do you have to have arrived before you're 5 years old? Do you know? I'm
not sure what it is. I guess I should know, but I'm not sure. I don't know what the age is.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about it, though, is, look, the right is all sorts of upset. Tucker Carlson about lost his ever-loving mind on Trump. He turned on him. He was like, how could you possibly do this? You've sold us out. And the thing that really interested me when Donald Trump said, we still want a wall, we still want immigration reform, we still want to tighten up our borders, but we want to have something in place in a bipartisan way that protects people that came here as young children. You know what that reminded me of, Travis? Like, you know what it smacked of?
No, what?
It was an unbelievably Reagan-esque move. Reagan had this reputation of being a guy that was a genuinely nice guy who could possibly send us all to hell in a nuclear firestorm. But Reagan also had this thing where he kind of was a politician that didn't know a whole lot about politics, and that suited him just fine. He had principles upon which he stood. This was the idea. This was the appeal of Reagan. He was a normal individual that enjoyed his early TV dinners with Nancy and liked to go to bed before 7:30 and all the above. But he had this reputation of being a guy. The people that like Reagan would think of him as a guy that really cared about people. That was a compassionate sort. That was a bit more of a bleeding heart than his hardcore conservative principles would lead you to believe that he was. And he also had this reputation of not really knowing what was going on in the world of politics, not really understanding American political process. He would just say to the people around him, I want this. I think this is the right thing. You guys go do politics and make it happen. And that is exactly what Donald Trump did yesterday, where he was just like, yeah, I think we need something in place to protect the dreamers. And I want a bill of love. It really is a bill of love. And I trust you guys to make it happen. Whatever you guys come up with, I'll sign it. Just make it happen. And it was something out of the Reagan Playbook 101. It really was.
I think he's a genius in doing this. And I use that word cautiously because I know he referred to himself as a genius, and a lot of people are, very upset about that. But I think this move is one of the smartest that he's made in a long time, because I think he is playing it like a pro, because he looks like the good guy, just like you described him. He looks like a guy who really cares. It's a bill of love. But I think he knows that Congress is absolutely incapable of coming up with this bill. So he looks like the good guy saying, you know what? Give it to me. Give it to me and I will sign it. And he knows good and well there's never going to be a bill. I think you're absolutely right. I think he went, I got to look like the good guy here. I really care about kids. Let's make sure we look after the kids. How are we going to take care of these kids? Well, you guys come up with the best solution, and I trust you. You know, you're public servants, and go serve the public, figure out how we're going to take care of these kids. And, you know, I'll put my stamp of approval on it. And the chain reaction that it set off, especially on the right, it's basically created distraction and civil war and uproar and skirmish and all these things that, you're exactly right, Travis, mean this thing's never even going to get written. You know, no, of course not. And it's funny because I can't believe it.
He gets to look magnanimous because he was like, all I wanted to do was do something nice for the kids. Too bad you people couldn't get it together. Well, we'll just have to readdress it at some other point.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So I remember back in the day when Ronald Reagan was president and I was a wee strip of a lad. I remember talking to my dad about him, and I don't even remember if my dad voted for him. My dad, I think, was one of those guys who probably leans left. He's a bit of a Democrat, I suppose. Like, his whole family is very left leaning. My family's a typical Northeastern family, you know, from New York City up to Massachusetts. There is a very good chance that if you go outside and bump into someone, that person is going to be a liberal Democrat. Then I spent sort of like a large portion of my life in Houston, where the exact opposite is true. And you can run outside and go, guns, no Obama. And you'll be met with a rousing chorus of guns, no Obama. So my father's sort of an interesting one, because I think he was sort of like me in that he didn't subscribe to any political party. He was more about the person. I remember listening to an Eddie Murphy stand-up tape. I guess it was Raw. Do you remember this? Did you listen to those growing up? Was that a thing for you?
I didn't listen to him growing up. I know what you're talking about now, though. Like, I listened to, Jerky Boys, I think, when I was growing up. I don't know. It's kind of the same thing, kind of not.
There was an Eddie Murphy stand-up bit, and cast your mind back. See if you remember this, but Eddie Murphy was talking about how people got shot that year, and it was the year that Ronald Reagan got shot. And he said something about Ronald Reagan, and someone in the crowd yelled out, "Reaganomics sucks." And he went, "Tell us something we don't know." And I remember talking to my father about this and saying, everybody I know says Reaganomics sucks and Reagan's a bad guy and he's not a good president. How come some people really seem to like him? And my father was very quick to say, well, Ronald Reagan, seems to, and I don't know if he actually does, but Ronald Reagan seems to care about people. And I didn't understand anything. I was a little kid, but you know, you hear people, you repeat stuff when you're a kid. You hear someone say Reagan sucks, and you go, Reagan sucks, and you don't know why you're saying it, but you just have this belief that Reagan sucks, or Reaganomics sucks, or whatever it is sucks. This cartoon sucks, this band sucks, whatever. You just parrot it off, and then you're surprised to run into people that really, really sort of like the guy and talk about how great he is. You know, this is sort of like all from knee level. You're this little tyke of a kid, and you're around adults, and you hear them talking about stuff like that. You go, hold on, I thought everything about Ronald Reagan sucks. At least that's what I learned on the Eddie Murphy tape. But these people are talking about how they really like him. And I remembered my father said, Well, Ronald Reagan, whether you agree with him or disagree with him, he really seems to care about people. And I think that was the move that Donald Trump took from the Reagan playbook when he did that thing with... He came in yesterday and he provided a great piece of television theater. Like, usually the press is not allowed to stick around for the entirety of these policy meetings, but he kept the cameras running the whole time, and he allowed reporters to stay the whole time. And he looked like a white knight riding in the most magnanimous horse you've ever met, because he was like, hey, I believe in immigration reform. I believe in tougher border control. I believe in all these things, but I still think we got to do something for the kids that came here before they were adults and had any sort of hand in it. We've got to do something to protect them. Whatever it is you guys want to do, I'll do it. Just come up with it. I'll sign it. And it was like a Reagan move. I really care about people. He even went as far as to call it a bill of love. And then, in addition to that, in this unbelievably fantastic piece of television theater, it was amazing. He kept trotting it out again. Bill of love. And he was like, even if I don't agree with it, I'll sign it. And it was just like, it was amazing. It was him going like, I'm willing to put myself aside for what you and the American people decide is best with regards to the fate of these children. And I think it had something to do with, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, Travis, but I think it had something to do with Oprah. I do.
I had not thought about that. And it's funny because I was about to say, I do think you're right. I do think he pulled one out of the Reagan playbook. But the thing that I never thought about Oprah. Number one, I never thought about Oprah. Number two, I will say, I don't think this is the new Trump you're going to be seeing. Okay, I don't think that, like, don't get used to it because it's going to be back to his old ways soon. But number three, I can't believe that both sides fell for it. Like, how stupid are you? Like, on the right, everybody I heard was like, oh my God, how can he be? Mm-hmm. How can he be changing sides? He campaigned on this. And I mean, they were just all up in a mess. And then the other side, they got bamboozled as well, if that's the right word to use, because they're like, oh my God, Trump has said and done something that we've never seen before, we never expected, and they fell for it too. So I'm shocked.
In all of this, Trump looks to look like the nice guy, the white knight that rode in on the unbelievably magnanimous steed. But
he does.
He does. He really does. But you're right. It'll probably never come into existence. He basically just started a huge fight while making himself look really freaking good. But I think, look, one of the reasons Donald Trump was able to win the election was his ability to appeal to what the people in front of him wanted to see and hear. He knew exactly how to pander to every single crowd so he could stay alive at the polls for the next 10 minutes and outlast everybody else. He knew exactly how to tap into the feelings of the moment, the second, the person in front of him. He's an expert panderer. And I think he saw Oprah Winfrey not even talk about throwing her hat in the ring, but literally the rest of the world, not just people in America, the rest of the world right now is talking about Oprah Winfrey possibly being president of these United States of America and leader of the free world. Oprah is unbelievably popular around the globe. So you best believe that when the entirety of the universe is talking about it, Donald Trump's ears prick up and he's going, well, what do they like about her so much? She is great. I mean, she's really rich. She's self-made like me. She's done TV, and actually she's a little more self-made than me because she didn't get $1 million loan from her dad. And what is it people really like about her? Oh, people really seem to like that she's nice and compassionate. And she set up these schools for starving orphans in different countries. And I think people really like Oprah's compassion. Let me tap into some of that. And Donald Trump is, if nothing else, a master at reading the room. Like, if you are one of those people that kids yourself that he's a raging idiot, look, does he shoot from the hip? Is he unpredictable? Does he keep people unbalanced? Do some of the things that he says and he does absolutely make you go, what the hell are you thinking? This is absolute insanity. And even if it is, even if that Fire and Fury book about him being mentally unstable is true, it doesn't take away from the fact that he knows how to appeal to the people in front of him. And I have to imagine Oprah Winfrey has something to do with the kinder, gentler Trump that we just saw.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radio Land. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on, come on.
So the saga of Bannon continues. Stephen K. Bannon stepped down from his post as executive chairman of Breitbart News. What does all this mean? What does this mean with regard to his role, not only in the media, but also in American political circles? It's sort of an interesting one. And I find this guy to be the most fascinating person to come along in politics for a very, very long time. So I'm sure he'll love to know that me and guys like me are probably talking about him all over the country. And we're going to do that. We're going to ask what's next for Stephen K. Bannon after being bounced from the White House and also being, well, he wasn't bounced from Breitbart, but you best believe people thought it was a good idea for him to step down when he did. We'll get into all that a little later on in the show. Right now, though, Travis, go lightly. We apparently have a new crop of horrifying Hollywood sex monsters to contend with. Who are they?
It's going to be interesting. It's one of the guys that I think is kind of Hollywood's golden boy, James Franco, among them.
You know...
Did you see it coming or no?
I got to tell you, I didn't necessarily see sexual misconduct allegations coming, but what was he on that show back in the day when we were kids? Was it Freaks and Geeks? Was he on that show?
Oh, God, I don't know. The first time my exposure to him was Pineapple Express. That's when I figured out who he was. I loved him in the movie. It was a great movie.
James Franco, I think, started out, unless I'm making this up, started out in Freaks and Geeks along with... Seth Rogen and the guy from How I Met Your Mother, the tall dude Marshall. Like it really was.
You're right. I just looked it up. It is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a jumping off point for a lot of today's actors. It was a sort of like teen dramedy back in the day when we were kids. But I remember kind of seeing him then and getting the sense that he was a little sleazy. And then he made a documentary about porn, and he's got like videos of him talking to his grandma about porn. And didn't he do that? Yeah. Didn't he do that thing once where he did that thing once where it was part of a stunt for the promotion for a movie where it looked like his Instagram got hacked and he was trying to set up some sort of like meeting with an underage girl. Like people went, oh no, James Franco is going down in flames, and it's right as his movie's about to come out. And then the whole thing turned out to be a ruse, a con. It was part of the promotion for the movie. And he was
really?
Like, yeah. But if you're the type of guy who's like, sure, I'll let the public think for a second that I'm, chasing after underage girls online. If that's you, then the idea of sexual misconduct doesn't really surprise me. There's a sleazy quality to James Franco that I always thought was there. So did I think this was going to happen as I was playing as I was sort of like looking at a wall of celebrities deciding who the next domino to fall would be? Did I think it would be James Franco? It didn't occur to me, but I find this to be unsurprising. Do you have the details?
Well, apparently like a few people that had worked with him, one girl who was in his, I don't know if he was like doing an acting deal and she was on that or something, but one girl said that she made him or that he had her get naked a few times for like $100 a day or something in some acting deal that she thought was ridiculous, and she felt like she couldn't turn it down. Apparently,
so wait, it was I'll give you $100 if you get naked. This is an acting thing. This doesn't seem legit. Here's $100, and the $100 she's saying is now not worth that much to her. But she felt as though she had to do it because if she didn't do it, she was going to have her career shut down because she wasn't playing into James Franco's little game, and it was humiliating and awful and degrading and all of the above. Yeah, no, I don't have a hard time picturing that somehow.
Yeah, I don't either. It's going to be interesting. He went on TV and basically said that, you know what, these people who are coming out against me, I completely respect them. I don't know what their deal is or why they don't like me, but I assure you this isn't the case. So,
right.
So it'll be interesting to see what comes of it.
There's a weird power thing as well, and it doesn't just exist in Hollywood circles. It doesn't just exist in entertainment circles. There's a weird thing where it's not just limited to women. This is sort of like a classic bully move. Watch what I can make this person do. Like, yeah. I mean, like you had that jerk friend in school. Like, hey, watch what I can make this freshman do. Hey, freshman, go lock yourself in your locker and punch yourself in the face. Okay. Ha 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 ha. I rule and they don't. You know, that is. And so I could see James Franco being like, I can make this chick walk around naked for $100 a day. Watch. And not necessarily thinking it was sort of end of the world stuff, just because that's a culture that exists in America of bullying. And you know what? If he did that and he's getting called out on it, well, good, because that's not okay. But like I said, it's not that much of a stretch for me to believe that James Franco's a bit of a creeper.
Also in the latest class of pervies, Michael Douglas.
Oh, really? Again,
yes.
Not surprising. Like, that doesn't, no, I don't find that to be difficult. Like, when he was called Gordon, what was his character called in Wall Street? Gordon Gekko, right?
I don't actually know.
I think sure. Gordon Gekko.
I'm not overly familiar with him.
Okay, so he played this character called Gordon Gekko in a movie called Wall Street with Charlie Sheen when Charlie Sheen was young. This is like an 80s movie, I think. And he had the immortal line, "Greed is good." And he looked a little lizardy. And I remember seeing it. And I remember thinking, that guy, they call him a gecko, and that makes perfect sense because he looks sort of like slimy and pointy-headed and lizardy, and that, yeah. And so that guy also, you have to remember, is the son of Kirk Douglas. Like he's sort of Hollywood royalty is what he is. So you got to imagine he's not a guy that's heard no a whole lot in his life, and he is a person who perhaps had a distorted sense of. He had a distorted sense of reality, and he seems sleazy, so it's very easy to imagine that he would have engaged in something that could be classified as sexual misconduct. A guy who gets whatever the hell he wants for his entire life, who's a movie star, who's pretty much got autonomy to move through the world the way he wants to. And, I'm sure surrounded by tons of women that said yes, but then, one comes along and he says no. And she says no, and he goes, no, what's no? I'm not familiar with no. I'm just going to whip it out and do what I was going to do, and we'll figure out what this no thing is later. So what happened with him?
Well, apparently there is no accusation yet, but he thinks that one is coming. It's a forthcoming claim.
Then he definitely did it. Like, nobody's accused me yet, but, just getting out in front of this.
So he's doing interviews to try and preemptively quash it. I guess the claim that's going to come out is that he was playing with himself in front of someone.
Oh, really? He was really enjoying himself, if you know what I mean. I think you do, in an unwanted way. That's a weird thing. That's such a weird thing. That's that thing that we talked about the other day on the show, that Harvey Weinstein, Louis C.K., and now I guess Michael Douglas move. And look, if you're like me, you have nothing but shame for your body. I grew up in England. And the idea that a girl would ever let me see and or touch a boob is amazing to me. And the limited times in my life that's happened, I've been very, very appreciative. But I also have not gotten it twisted and never once thought, like, because I'm getting to see the stuff that I enjoy seeing, they want to see that. No one wants to see that. I'm just going to turn the lights down and, try and mitigate the damage. I don't want them to see it. That would be horrible. I don't like to see it. Why would they want to see it?
Well, apparently we're the weird ones, because I'm starting to feel strange for not wanting to do that in front of them.
Well, there's also, yeah. Actually, I just remembered now. When I was in New York City, I was a DJ. In the sort of like club DJ sense, and I remember we would finish up really, really late at night or very early in the morning. Sometimes, like, things would go to sort of 2, 3 in the morning. And I remember there was this one hostess that worked at one of the clubs where I used to DJ, and she, after one very late night, she came in and said, "Ugh, I had the worst trip home after that last party you threw." I was like, "Oh, sorry." She's like, Can can I go home at a different time next time? I was like, well, I'm not the boss. Ask the boss, I'm sure. Why? What happened? She's like, something happened on the subway that was disgusting. I was like, what? She's like, well, and she lived, I think, all the way out in Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn. She's taken like the train from the city. And if you've done that trip, it's not a short one. And she said some guy got into the car with her, the subway car. It was empty because it was super late / super early. And they were more or less alone. And she was like, he took it out. And then he he did his thing until he finished in front of me and then left. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, wow. It was disgusting and terrifying, but I wound up feeling really lucky because he never tried to touch me or anything like that. I was like, men are freaking weird. Men are extremely like, what the hell, man?
I don't know.
What is with that? Like, and she was traumatized, but she also, like I said, felt really grateful that nothing more had happened. And I was just like, do whatever you got to do to get home in a safe manner. Like next time you stay really late, like I'll give you money out of my pocket to get a cab or something. She was like, cab drivers aren't much better. And I was like, I don't know. You chose this job, not me. But, let's do what we can to keep you safe. But I was horrified about what she told me. And I was like, I'd never heard of anything like that happening. I'd heard of, sexual assault and robbery and muggings and stuff like that happening on trains. But I'd never heard of someone coming out and, jumping into a subway car.
Yeah.
handling their business and leaving. It was so strange. But the thing about the public touchy selfie people that do that in front of folks, there's a sort of plausible deniability to it where they can kind of tell themselves, I didn't touch them. It wasn't really an unwanted. Like Louis C.K. said, he would ask people, hey, do you mind if I do this? And they're like, huh, what? And he'd be like, I asked, whack, 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 whack. And he would feel like he did, like.
Oh my God.
He asked, therefore it was okay. And so I think that's part of it. If you're like a creeper, if you've got whatever sickness in you that makes you want to behave in that way, like. Yeah. That might be a way for you to go, all right, at least I'm not touching them. At least I'm not, actively assaulting them. They could leave. I asked and they could have turned around and walked away anytime they wanted to. I didn't lock the door. Well, I mean, if you're Harvey Weinstein, you lock the door. But Louis C.K. and, Michael Douglas might not have been door lockers. They might have been like, hey, you're the one sitting there watching it. And I'm just, going about my day as I usually do. Oh, 12:30, time for a little relief, if you know what I mean. And I think you do. Do you mind if I do this here? No, of course you don't mind. Okay, fine. Oh, we're done now. Why do you look terrified? I have no idea why you look terrified. You didn't have to watch that. I didn't make you watch that. I get off scot-free, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah. This one will be interesting. Supposedly, it happened 32 years ago. The woman is not identified specifically. He says she was a lady who was involved in development at my company, and we just didn't have a good development record at the time that she was there, so I moved on.
So that helped with the problem? Our development record isn't really working out. Zip. Let's see if this improves the situation.
That was his excuse for getting rid of her. He says he didn't do it. He says that he never blackballed her like she's going to claim. She claims that he prevented her from getting other work in the industry. He says if people called and asked him about her, he would have been honest, but he would have never blackballed her. It'll be interesting. I don't.
But where did he's going to say that she? He's going to say
he says it didn't happen. He says it didn't happen, but she's going to say it did.
But he's getting out of it and getting out in front of it in a very specific way, saying she's going to say that I blackballed her and that I engaged in the old 5-knuckle shuffle, that I bashed the bishop in front of her, if you know what I mean. That's pretty specific. Like,
yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did. I just want you to know that. I definitely did not whack it in front of one of my coworkers 32 years ago. That sounds like you did. Sounds an awful lot like you did.
Yeah, and the other one rounding out the class, Marvel creator Stan Lee.
Oh, this one I know a little something about because I'm a huge nerd. Literally everything that Stan Lee created means the world to me.
Really?
Oh, man.
I didn't know this. I mean, that's good. That's cool. I'm not here to judge. It's fine. I had no idea you were into it.
I mean, on the one hand, he's a guy that created a universe where literally every woman looks like Dolly Parton in Zero Gravity. But
how can yeah.
But
how can you not love it?
well, yeah. This is maybe not the most appropriate time to talk about.
No, it may not be.
Let's separate this into a different segment. But
awkward.
Yeah, it's unbelievably awkward. But no, I mean, Stan Lee, I do know a little something about this, but he was accused, like he's 95 years old, and he was accused by a couple of nurses of stuff, right? What was he accused of?
A type of sexy time that it rhymes with Horatio. This is a family-friendly show. I want to make sure that we dance around it. Also, he wanted that is what he demanded, and supposedly he got a little handsy with him, groped him, and walked around naked.
Walked around. If you're... I mean, the asking for the act that rhymes with Horatio is one thing, but if you're like a nurse to a 95-year-old dude and he's naked in front of you, isn't that kind of part of the gig? Anyways, we'll get into exactly why I have hope for the Stan Lee situation next.
Now, more AD on the radio.
Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you my musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me. Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you a musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me.
So in the developing saga of horrifying Hollywood sex monsters, we have a couple new people that we have to consider. James Franco, you said, Travis, go lightly.
James Franco, the leader of the pack.
He has
Michael
been accused. Well, let's run down the accusations here really quick. James Franco has been accused of a female that used to work with him of asking her to be naked and paying her $100 to do so. And she felt as though if she didn't take the $100 and get naked, she was killing her career. And therefore, James Franco abused his power. And this was sexual misconduct. James Franco, as we've discussed, seems a little sleazy. So this is not necessarily entirely surprising. He might have thought it was totally innocent, but it was not. But he denies it completely. Michael Douglas has done something kind of interesting. Michael Douglas said, okay, so you're going to hear something. In 30 or so years ago, there was this woman I used to work with, and it didn't work out too well, so I fired her. She's about to now come back and say that I forced her to watch me perform the 5-knuckle shuffle on myself and then blackballed her throughout the industry. So that's the next one. And then finally, beloved creator of Spider-Man, the man who told us that with great power comes great responsibility, has been accused of abusing that power. Stan Lee. Stan Lee's 95 years old, and he's been accused by nurses or home healthcare workers of asking for a sex act to be performed on him that rhymes with Horatio, as Travis Golightly so succinctly put it, and also walking around naked in front of him, right?
That's right. And just to be specific, because of how specific the claim is, he wanted that act in the shower.
Oh, in the shower.
Yes, he wanted that to be done while he showers, apparently. Yeah. Uh-huh.
The thing that was interesting about this is that Stan Lee's lawyers, I mean, okay, because like the walking around naked thing, like if you're the nurse of a 95-year-old man,
you're going to see him.
You're going to see stuff. Like that's part of your job, care for the elderly. And look, Stan Lee might be in every single Marvel movie and every single Marvel TV show still, but he's 95 years old. My brother-in-law worked with Stan Lee for a little bit because he's in comics. He's like... he's one of the editors of Superman, and I think he worked with Stan Lee. I got to call him and find out if this was surprising to him, and then not quote him on the air because I'm sure he wants to be completely left out of it in comic book circles. But for me, Stan Lee sort of represents what could be an interesting swing back of the pendulum because his lawyers said immediately, nope, not true, didn't happen. This is an extortion attempt. And I think I think people are sort of buying it. Look, people want to buy it. Stan Lee's a beloved guy. He created stuff that enthralled all of us for years. I know my life would have been borderline meaningless as a child if I hadn't had Spider-Man comic books to read. But besides the fact that he's 95, so people have no problem picturing him to be a little less physically threatening than someone who is younger. And that doesn't mean that doesn't mean the form of his misconduct couldn't have been verbal. That's just as bad. But people see him as a bit less threatening because of his age. And these things are not correct. But people also think this is a beloved guy. He seems like a sweet guy. I don't know if he would do that. And the fact that his lawyers got right out in front of it and went, no, not true. We're going to shut this down. We're going to shut it down now. This is an extortion attempt, I think is an interesting swing back of the pendulum, because for a good month and a half there, all you had to do was have a whisper about that, the idea of sexual misconduct about you. All there had to be, was a whisper of sexual misconduct about you, and you were done for, freaking done, which is not okay. Look, these stories have to be told. These people have to be heard. It has to be okay for women to be able to come out and men to be able to come out that have been the victims of sexual misconduct or harassment or molestation or rape or any of the above. People have to be able to tell their stories. People have to be able to go to the authorities, and people have to be able to feel like they're not going to lose their jobs and their lives won't be ruined by coming out and talking about this stuff. But at the same time, it can't be an instant death situation for the people that are accused, because there's plenty of unscrupulous people that would abuse that. And that principle of, innocent until proven guilty seemed to go straight out the window in a lot of these situations. Now, with a lot of these folks, there was tremendous amounts of proof with the Harvey Weinsteins and the Kevin Spacey's of this world and the Bill Cosby's of this world. It seemed like you just couldn't get around the mountain of accusations and evidence that seemed to be piling up. But until we hear more about Stan Lee doing this, I'm sort of reserving judgment, and I think this could be a healthy thing. Somebody coming out and going like, absolutely, people need to be heard. No, this didn't happen, and we'll fight you tooth and nail about it.
Yeah. I think you're right. And I mean, he definitely does have every right, especially if he's innocent, to defend himself. And it would be a little bit of a different situation if you had, 9 different people all saying, no. This guy is a molester. He did this to all of us. But I mean, this is one of those that it definitely seems like a lot more is going to have to come out before.
Yeah.
Before anything is even believable here. Definitely take the accusations and do a little research, but I mean, my God, let's not crucify this guy yet.
Well, with the Russell Simmons thing, that's kind of a perfect example of the way this stuff seems to be unfolding in a bit more of a sensible way. Russell Simmons was accused. He went, no, sorry, I remember the night in question. And look, if I was dismissive of her as a person, if I was careless in my relationships with her, that's one thing, and I apologize for that. That's not good. But everything that happened between us was completely consensual. So no, she remembers it in a very different way. And then 5 other women came out and said, this happened, this happened, this happened. And when you look at that stuff pile up, you go, all right, there's a lot of smoke. There's got to be some kind of fire, sadly.
Yeah.
And so, like, if this is one of many Stan Lee accusations, as loath as I am to admit it, maybe, but yeah, there you go. And if it does happen, like I said before, this guy created an entire universe where every woman looked like Dolly Parton in Zero Gravity. So maybe not as surprising as I would like for it to be.
Not to ask you to choose sides, and it's such an awkward question to ask you, but who would you be more devastated about if it came out that either one of them, there was more to it, Stan Lee or Garrison Keillor?
Garrison Keillor. That would upset me a lot more, because Stan Lee came up with the idea of Spider-Man. I don't think I ever read a Spider-Man comic book that was written by Stan Lee. I think he stopped doing that stuff a bazillion years ago. I think, it was a concept. It was an idea. It was something that, he created, and that's an incredible thing. He created a tremendous universe, and it's got his fingerprints all over it. But I don't feel like the Spider-Man stories I read growing up are tainted by the idea that the dude that created the character all these years ago was accused at age 95 of showing his junk to a nurse. That doesn't bother me the same way as, look, I loved Bill Cosby. I loved Louis C.K. And I'd never seen Bill Cosby play live before, but I've seen Louis C.K. a couple times and it was freaking magical. And now it won't be if I ever go see him again. And you know what? I'm probably never going to go see him again. So yeah, it's the level of, I guess it's the level of removal you have from the person that did the deed that sort of mitigates your ability to enjoy their creations.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The Dumbing Up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
So it is a very different world this year for one Stephen K. Bannon than it was this time last year. This time last year, it seemed like he was going to run the freaking world from behind the scenes. He was a puppet master extraordinaire. It looked as though the White House, or Donald Trump's chief strategist, was really a bit of a Svengali type of person that could wield tremendous amounts of socio-political power and possibly tear down the existing infrastructure of the American government. And now he's kind of been forced to hit the bricks. He's been ousted from the White House. Donald Trump calls him Sloppy Steve, and he's stepped down as the head honcho in charge of Breitbart. What does all this really entail? I find him to be one of the most fascinating political figures of of my lifetime anyway. And we'll discuss that a little later on. Right now, though, Travis Golightly, let's take a look at the events of today in My Witness News. What is happening?
Marvel Comics legend Stan Lee has been accused of sexual misconduct by his home healthcare nurses.
Yeah. Like I said before, you mean to tell me a man who spent almost 80 years putting busty chicks in revealing outfits and having them stretch into a million different positions doesn't respect women? Shocker. The news left Marvel fans like me asking questions. Specifically, what is sex? Go on.
Lindsay Lohan says she wants to star in a Batgirl movie.
Really? Really? I think she'd probably be better as Poison Ivy, considering all the guys she's probably left itchy. Batgirl. Yeah, I don't really see it. Bat Hag, maybe? Is that a thing? It could be a thing. They could write the part for her. I would be very surprised if that ever happened. What else?
CBS announced Face the Nation host John Dickerson will take over for Charlie Rose.
Charlie Rose being another horrifying Hollywood sex monster that would go on business trips, and the people that worked for him, the female staffers around him, he'd call them into his hotel room and walk around naked and drop the robe and do all that sort of like creepy McCreeperson stuff. He was guilty of sexual misconduct in the most hideous and unimaginable ways. And the thing that perplexes me a little bit is, who's the guy replacing him again?
John Dickerson from Face the Nation.
Yeah. You heard that right. CBS thinks the best way to make you forget they once employed a dude who kept exposing his junk is to replace him with a dude named Dickerson.
I wasn't sure where you were going to go with it, and I just had this feeling. I just had this feeling.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes the jokes write themselves.
They do. Radiohead has accused Lana Del Ray of plagiarism.
Oh, yeah. Yep. This is actually sort of a fascinating topic. It really is. Have you heard the two songs?
No, I haven't. I don't really know that much about Lana Del Ray.
Well, Lana Del Ray, I don't really know much about her music, but like, if you hear the two songs back to back, hold on a second. Let me dig around and find them.
Is it a case of Queen and Vanilla Ice all over again?
Kind of, sort of, but there's an interesting twist to it. The latest Your Song Sounds Too Much Like My Song lawsuit involves Lana Del Rey potentially being sued by Radiohead. Now, Radiohead's publisher came out and said, who is it, Warner Chappell?
Yeah.
They said no lawsuit has been filed yet. So they might not have sued her yet, but I think the implication is there that you got to do the right thing. The Lana song in question is Get Free off of her album Lust for Life that came out this past summer just gone by. The chorus doesn't sound like Creep, but other parts of the song are really, really similar.
Finally, I'm crossing the threshold from the ordinary world to the reveal of my heart.
I mean, the chord progression is identical and the melody is super similar. Here's Radiohead's Creep. You a Radiohead fan, Travis?
I'm not. I hope that's not the wrong answer. I'm not.
Look you in the eye.
Let's go back to Lana Del Ray.
Undoubtedly, that will for certain.
I mean, super close. But the
Yeah.
reason Radiohead might not be suing Lana Del Ray is because Radiohead kind of sort of didn't write that. Do you know the Hollies? You know that song?
No. Yes.
The Air That I Breathe?
Yes.
Okay, listen to this. So, unbelievably similar to Radiohead's Creep. You could agree.
Yeah.
And you know who noticed that? You know who noticed that the Hollies, The Air That I Breathe was really similar to Creep by Radiohead?
No.
The Hollies. And when it came out, they went, hey there. And you know what? Tom York sort of asked for forgiveness instead of permission when he wrote Creep. And he came out and said, well, Creep is sort of an adaptation of the Hollies, The Air That I Breathe. He took the chords, he kind of did his own thing to it, and it was 100% inspired by the Hollies. But he didn't say, hey, Hollies, I've got this thing that's an adaptation of your music. I want to release it. Can I? By the time it was out, it was a huge hit. I think there was a fear from Radiohead's record label that if they asked the Hollies for permission, the thing would never come out. And they knew they were sitting on one of the hugest hits of the century, which in fact they were. So like I said, they decided instead to ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And if you go back and you look at the writing credits to Creep, the Hollies are on it. They own part of the publishing on it. So Creep kind of can't sue Radiohead kind of can't sue Lana Del Ray over her song because they technically aren't the people that wrote Creep. It's a shared thing. So there you go. Lana Del Ray says, although I know my song wasn't inspired by Creep, who are you trying to kid? It sounds exactly like it. It's like you slowed it down and copied it note for note. Radiohead feel it was, and they want 100% of the publishing. I offered up to 40 over the last few months, but they will only accept 100. Their lawyers have been relentless, so we will deal with it in court. So they haven't sued, but they're threatening legal action.
If I were her, my defense would be I copied the Hollies.
Yeah. No.
I'd be like, I don't know. I've never heard Creep, but I'll tell you what, I love that song.
That would be,
you guys ripped it off.
Yeah, that would be the real hipster move as well. Is there a band called Radiohead? I don't know. I grew up listening to the Hollies. That's such a hip. You're like, I like this chord progression before it was cool. You know.
Oh my God, that would be hilarious. Oh, I hope it happens.
Yeah, so like I said, the weird part is Creep is a partial ripoff of the Hollies song, The Air That I Breathe, and they admitted that they lifted the parts of the song and settled out of court and ended up giving the original songwriters some of the royalties from Creep. So there you go. Make of that what you will. What else?
Rod Stewart turns 73 today.
No kidding. I think he's marking the occasion by releasing a follow-up to Do You Think I'm Sexy called No Need to Answer That. Go on.
Buffalo's Richie Incognito allegedly used a racial slur during Sunday's playoff game.
Oh, no. What shame you have brought upon the originally pristine reputation of the Buffalo Bills, said absolutely nobody aware of O.J. Simpson. Man, yeah, that's not cool. But Richie Incognito is like not a good dude. Anybody that knows anything about football knows he has a history of not being a good dude. So there you go. What else?
The Minnesota Vikings surprised a fan for her 100th birthday by giving her tickets to the playoff game on Sunday.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. I think is really, really sweet. 99-year-old lifelong Vikings fan in Minnesota got a gift from the team for upcoming 100th birthday, free playoff tickets. Here's her talking about being a Vikings fan.
4th of July, I will be 100. I sit in that chair and watch the game. This is a foam brick. I used to throw it and had to get up all the time, so I put a string on it to retrieve it. I didn't have to get up then. There were years I got up all the time, So I thought, well, this is dumb. I said to him, is this real? I'm going to take my binoculars along. I think they're the best. I have a lot of confidence in them. They're going to make it this year. They better, because I don't have too much time to worry.
That brick she's talking about in the middle of the segment is a foam stress brick, which was a team promotion at some point, and she throws it at her TV when she gets upset by a bad play. Got tired of retrieving it, so she attached a string to it so she can keep reeling it back in. Because the way the Vikings have played over the last couple of years, there would have been a lot of brick throwing. But you know what? Now I like. Do you care about the football game this weekend?
No, not at all.
Yeah, we don't really have a dog in the race. But now, like when she said, "I hope they win," I don't have much time left, and I hope they win. Now I'm rooting for the Vikings. I would love to see that happen. Yeah, that would be
that's nice.
That would be pretty cool. Man, I got a friend of mine's father. Sorry, was a huge Chicago Cubs fan, and found out that he had terminal brain cancer, and he said, I would really love it if the Cubs could win the World Series before I passed away, and they did. And he died not long after. Like, he died a couple weeks after the Cubs won the World Series, after not winning the World Series for 108 years. And it was one of the most beautifully poetic things I have ever heard of. It was good stuff. Well, and what was interesting was the guy's brother had passed away years before as well, and he never got to see the Cubs win. But my buddy, during a press day for the Chicago Cubs, took some of his uncle's ashes out onto the field. They have those events at baseball stadiums where they invite schlubs like us to sort of like come out and see stuff and, take batting practice and whatnot. And he actually snuck a couple of his uncle's ashes under second base at Wrigley Field. And so he feels as though his father got to see the Cubs win, and his uncle was actually on the field during their winning season as well. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool. Anyways, yep. Go Vikings, or go Vikings, right? Or is it go Packers? I'm not sure. I'm getting my Midwestern accents mixed up, but go Vikings. All right. A couple more. I don't think we're going to have time to talk about Stephen K. Bannon. Let's just roll through what remains of the news.
All right. North Korea is going to be sending athletes to the Winter Olympics.
They're expected to lead all the other countries in defections, and that's all the time we have today. Thank you, Travis Golightly.
Thank you, sir.